Alright, so let's now take a look at designing a house in Google SketchUp. So we want to go ahead and start a new document under File, New. Make sure that we're starting over with that clean screen, and we should still be using that Bright Ideas default template. First, we want to draw the footprint of our house using the rectangle tool. So activate your rectangle tool, and then we'll just click once in the top left corner, move our cursor to suggest a direction, let go of the mouse and type in 64 apostrophe comma 44 apostrophe enter. So we're drawing this rectangle at 64 feet by 44 feet. This will be the footprint of our house. Now we can roll our scroll wheel back to zoom out and then push down on that scroll wheel button to kind of orbit around. And it's often helpful to make sure that your screen is aligned in a similar way to mine. So you want your red axis projecting to the top right and your green axis projecting to the top left. Next, let's use our push-pull tool and let's extrude this rectangle or this footprint up by 20 feet 8 inches. So I'll activate my push-pull tool and then hover on my surface and click once to start. Move my cursor to suggest a direction and let go of the mouse. Now I can type in 20 apostrophe 8 enter. So that's going to pull that guy up by 20 feet 8 inches. Now we've got a basic massing for this house, and what we want to do is draw a line across the top middle of this block, and we're going to split that top surface and allow it to fold up into a roof. So if I was to draw a line from midpoint, click once to start, go straight back on the red to the back midpoint, and click again to finish. Now I've effectively separated these two surfaces. So I can now use my Move Copy tool to move this edge straight up. So I'm going to do just that. Pre-select this edge with my selection tool. Next, we'll go to our Move Copy tool and click on the edge. So click once to pick it up. Move the cursor up on the blue axis, and once you find that blue axis, let go of the mouse and type in 10 apostrophe enter. So we can move that straight up by 10 feet, and now we've kind of created our roof form. Now we also want that roof to angle back from the ends as well. So what we can do is split these surfaces to allow them to fold, because right now it won't fold on its own, so we need to draw in this line here. And before I do that, I'm just going to right click in the white space to clear my selection. And now with my line tool, I'll go from endpoint to endpoint, and then let's do the same thing over here, endpoint to endpoint. Now because these two surfaces are split, I'm able to use my Move Copy tool and move this point straight back on the red axis. So I click once to pick it up, find my red axis and suggest my direction, let go of the mouse, and this time we'll type in 17 feet, enter. And then let's do the same thing over here. I click once to pick it up, move my cursor back on the red axis to suggest my direction, let go of the mouse and type in 17 apostrophe enter. So now we've kind of pushed those in and given this hip roof all the way around. Now let's add some more detail to this roof. Let's give it these gable ends on it. So we'll use our line tool and let's go from midpoint to midpoint here. So again, we're breaking these surfaces to allow them to fold. And we can go from midpoint to midpoint here. Now, when I move this back forward, we can use our Move Copy tool. I'm going to use inference locking to do this. So navigate to that view that is strategic for what you're working on. With the Move Copy tool active, I'll click once to pick it up, find my red axis, and hold down Shift. Now we're locked on that red axis, and I can snap to a point to define my distance. So I'll click once there, let go of Shift, orbit around to the other side. Again, I click once to pick it up, find my red axis and hold down shift. So now we've got that guy locked, and then all I need to do is snap to a point to define the distance. So I'll click once there, and now we have that more intricate roof created. Alright, so we're not done yet. This roof isn't quite 3D yet, so what we want to do is push all these sides of this in by 2 feet. So activate your push-pull tool, and we'll click once to start, move our cursor to suggest the direction, let go of the mouse, and type in su101 enter. So I've pushed in that side by 2 feet. Now the push-pull tool, remember, has a memory. I can double click on each side and it will remember the fact that I pushed in 2 feet as my last distance. So you can double click to access that memory of the push-pull tool. Okay, things are looking a little bit better here. Now if I orbit around and look at this from the bottom, you can see we have some extra edges that are created, and that's just kind of the way that SketchUp works. So we'll use our eraser tool to clean up any unwanted geometry. So we'll get rid of these guys here on each side. So now we have our roof form, but we do want to have that fascia on there. So let's use our push-pull and pull this guy down by 8 inches. So I'll go to my push-pull tool, and because we deleted all those additional edges, this comes down as one solid mass. I click once to start, move my cursor to suggest a direction, and type in 8, enter. So now we've pulled that down by 8 inches. Now we also want to add a trim piece around the entire house, or a band. So I'm going to push this up by, let's go up by 10 feet. So from the bottom, I click once to start, suggest my direction, and type in 10' enter. So we're up by 10 feet there. Now, to create my band, I can click once to start, tap Control, suggest my direction, let go of the mouse, and type in 12, enter. So now we've pulled that down by 12 inches. And then let's do that one more time. Click once to start. We still have our plus sign on, which creates a new starting face. And this time we want to pull that down by 9 feet. So you can see how we've created that band all the way around now. Now we also want to add a few more details. We want to add a patio and a deck on the front. So the first thing we'll do is let's push everything back. I need to tap Control to untoggle that plus sign. I don't want to leave a starting face behind, so I tap Control or Option on the Mac to turn that off. I'll click once to start, move my cursor to suggest a direction, and type in 10' enter. Once more, I can double click and double click here. So now I've pushed all that back by 10 feet. Again, we have some extra geometry here. We can use our eraser tool to swipe some of that extra stuff out of there that we don't need to see. And one more detail, let's add a 6-inch concrete slab projecting out of the front of this. So to do that, we want to make a copy of this bottom edge up. So we don't always have to use the line tool to create geometry. We can also use the Move Copy tool to make copies of lines, and that'll separate surfaces just the same. So with your Move Copy tool active, I can just hover on edge, click once to pick it up, tap Control or Option on the Mac to toggle my copy command. Once I find my blue axis, I can let go of the mouse and type in 6, enter. So now we have our line copied up at 6 inches, and I can use my push-pull tool, and let's pull this guy out, but we also want to tap Control or Option on the Mac. We want to leave a copy of the starting face behind. So I'll click once to start and pull this out, and we're going to come out by 9 foot 4 inches. So 9'4", enter. Now, one more detail before we start coloring this guy in and adding some materials. We also want to add a trim board up here, an 8-inch trim, and we're going to use the offset tool. So just like we did in previous exercises, we want to pre-select using the selection tool. Select our first edge, hold down Control or Option on the Mac to add the second edge to our selection. Now we can go to our offset tool, and then I can click once to start, suggest my direction, let go of the mouse, and type in 8, enter. So now we have an 8-inch trim board. And then I'll orbit around to the back side as well, and let's try that again. Using your selection tool, we want to select the first edge, hold down Control or Option on the Mac. Now remember, the offset tool also has a memory. So I can go to my offset tool and then just double click. And it automatically offsets by 8 inches, or the last input. So you save yourself a lot of time by using the memory of these tools. Okay, we still have some edges selected back there, so I can right click in the white space to clear my selection. So there's the basic massing of our beach house, and let's start adding some color. So we'll go to our paint bucket tool, and that's going to launch our materials browser. And first we can add some roofing. So we'll click on the drop downs for all of our different materials libraries. And let's go to our roofing materials. And this first one, roofing metal standing seam red, I'll activate that as my active material, current material, and then start painting that onto the roof. So that red is a little strong, so we can click on Edit. And then I'm just going to completely desaturate using my HLS slider and then lighten it up so we kind of have more of a silver standing seam metal roof. So you can always modify the color. Next, we want to go back to our Select tab and then go to our Brick and Cladding library. And from here we can choose our siding. And let's see, let's add our siding to the top. So we'll add siding to the top half, and then we'll add stucco to the bottom half. And then let's also add that stucco to our gables up there on the roof. And then one more detail as far as modeling goes, we want to pull this band out by 1 inch. So with your push-pull tool, we can click once to start, move our cursor to suggest a direction, let go of the mouse and type in 1, enter. Now we don't want to pull this guy out, we're going to do something different over there. So I'll come around to the back, double click, and then let's also double click on the other side. So now we have a 3D band popping out, but we don't need to have that band popped out right here. Now let's go to our colors. We'll click on colors. And you know what, I'm sorry, let's actually go to our asphalt and concrete. And we're going to use our concrete and paint our patio. We'll get all sides of there. And then these colors are awfully bland. The roof material, that's just fine. We want that silver standing seam metal roof. But we don't really want to have this gray siding. So let's click on the house icon to see which materials are in our model. Here you can see we have our siding, cladding siding white. I can double click on that, and then I can use my sliders and start getting some color out of it. So I'm going to go for a pretty intense orange. Next, we want to go back to our selection tab and let's track down our stucco. So our stucco is the next one over, and if I double click on it, we get to our edit tab. Now for the stucco, we want to match the orange siding that we just created. So I can click on match the color of an object in the model, and then all I need to do is click on my siding, and it's going to match that orange exactly. So that way we don't have to go guessing and sliding the bars around again or trying to remember which numbers they were. You just point and click. Alright, now let's go to our Select tab, click on the drop down and go to your colors. Now you can see that we have a few things happening here. We have our default material is applied here. You can see that the backside of faces that have the default material kind of have this purple color. And the front side is white, which can be deceiving because it shows up as kind of two different colors. So what we need to do is apply an actual color to everything that has the default material applied to it. And here's a little shortcut. If you go to a color here, I'm going to choose a red that's pretty bold so we can really see what's happening, and then we're going to go back and change that red to a white. But to start off, we're just going to select a pretty bold color, and if I hold down Shift, notice what happens. On my paint bucket tool, I get those three little squares. That means that any surface that I click on, it's basically going to swap that material for the one that's active. So holding down Shift and I click on this trim piece, you can see it applies that material to all of the front sides of the default material. Now I also need to hold down Shift and apply it here because this is actually the back side. And this just is one of those things that happens in SketchUp because of the way that we created this geometry. You can always go in and reverse faces, but it's really not necessary. We can just hold down Shift and apply it there too. So now that saves us the hassle of having to go through this model and click every single surface. If you just hold down Shift, it's going to go through and apply our new material to everything that is the material that we're clicking on. And in this case, it was all of our trim. Now we can go to our Edit tab, and then we can slide this over to white. Now that we have all of our materials applied, let's start adding some detail with components. But before we do that, we can close our material browser, and we want to add a series of guidelines. So guidelines allow us to be very accurate in SketchUp, kind of sets up the framework for a detailed model. So we can create guidelines using our tape measure tool. Activate your tape measure tool up there on your large tool set. And if I hover on edge, I can click once to start, move my cursor up on the blue axis, let go of the mouse, and type in 8 apostrophe enter. So now we've created a guideline that goes up by 8 feet. And we want to add a line over here actually off of the patio that's 8 feet. So again, and you know what, actually I'm going to undo that. We'll go to Edit, Undo Guide, and we want to start over here. So we're going to hover on edge, click once to start, move our cursor to suggest a direction, and type in 8 apostrophe enter. So now we have a guideline that's 8 feet off of the patio. Then we can add a guideline over here. I'll click once to start, and instead of typing in I think it's 8'6", we can actually just snap to the intersection at the corner. So we can start adding these guidelines. The nice thing about guidelines is that you can just delete them all at once. Now we want to add another guideline here, but this time I really need to zoom in because I want to use this back edge. I can't use the front edge because I want to make sure that I'm snapping to this actual surface. So we need to zoom in. I can click once on edge to start, move my cursor up to suggest a direction, and let go of the mouse. I can now type in 8 apostrophe enter. And when I zoom out, you can see that that guideline came in right where it's supposed to be. So we don't always have to see what we're working on. We can just trust that that guideline was shooting off of the screen that we were looking at. Now, I'm going to hover on this edge, and let's create another guideline. Click once to start, and then I'll just snap it to that intersection at 8 feet. There we go. Now, we also want to add a guideline as a center point on the front here. So I can hover on edge, click once to start, and then just snap it to my midpoint. And in this case, I know it's a midpoint because it's cyan, but it's telling me that that point is at 20 feet. And then let's also add another guideline at 4 feet. So click once to start, move the cursor to suggest a direction. So here you can see we're on the green axis, let go of the mouse, and type in 4 apostrophe enter. So we're only coming off 4 feet from this side. Now we also want to come off the back of the house. So let's pull a guideline off of there at 5 feet. Click once to start, move the cursor to suggest a direction, let go of the mouse, and type in 5 apostrophe enter. Alright, so we have a series of guidelines all set up, and this is going to make it really easy to add our components. So now we can go to Window, Components, and open up your component browser. Now, on that Google logo, click on that, and let's search for su101, stands for SketchUp 101. And then if we go to the next page of results, this is where all of our beach house components reside. So what we can do is let's add first the large window. Now the large window you can see here on my screen, it's 4 from the left. SketchUp 101 beach house window large. I'll click once to download it, move over into my model, and then zoom in here, and you can see our intersection. I can click on that and add that window. So now we've dropped that window in there. Now I want to make a copy of this window, so I'll use my Move Copy tool, and I can just click once. It's already selected, it comes in selected, so I can just click once on the face, tap Control, and move my cursor on the red axis to suggest a direction and let go of the mouse. Again, it's Control on the PC, Option on the Mac. I'll type in 10 apostrophe enter. So we copy it at 10 feet, and then immediately after that I want to type 4x enter. So we're making 4 equal copies of that window. Now we also want to add a smaller window. So the smaller glass block window goes down here. So I'll navigate to a view that's strategic for what I'm working on. I'll click on my window small, and then we can just drop that guy in right there at that intersection and click once, and you can see how it actually cuts a hole in that wall for us, and it is already selected. So I'll click once to pick it up, tap Control or Option on the Mac, and move my cursor on the red axis to suggest a direction. At this point I let go of my mouse and type in 20 apostrophe enter, and we're going to make 2 copies, or 2x enter. So we'll copy it to the end 2 times. Okay, now on the front of this house we want to actually add in our deck, and I've already taken the time to build that deck, and the base point is right down here at the front bottom corner of the actual house. So I'll click once on the deck to download it, and then all I need to do is position my cursor down here and click to finish. Now you can see that my deck actually came in off axis, so what we're going to do is undo that. We'll choose Edit, Undo Load Component, and we're going to rotate our entire house. So we want to take everything. So So we'll go to Edit and choose Select All. We're going to take everything and then use our Rotate tool to rotate this by 180 degrees. So we select all, click on your Rotate tool, which are the two red arrows chasing each other, and then I'm just going to position it right down here in front of my house and click once to start, move my cursor out along the axis, and click once to establish my base point or my reference line. And then I'm going to rotate it around, let go of the mouse, and type in 180, enter. So now we have this guy rotated around. I'll go back to my selection tool and then right click in the white space. So this way, when I download my deck, it's going to come in on the proper axis, and it's possible that your model does not need to be rotated. If it came in at the right place on this bottom corner, you should just click on it and then just drop it right in there on that bottom corner. We'll get this worked out. This is our first run through the new SketchUp 101, so there'll be a new recording up that'll kind of iron that issue out. We'll make sure that we've built this on the same axes. That's really what happened there. So hopefully that's a quick and easy fix. If it didn't come in at the right place, you just want to rotate your entire model around. Alright, so now I have my deck on there, and at this point I'm going to go back to my selection tool. I always kind of default to that selection tool. We still have all of our guidelines set up. So now I can kind of hover in here, zoom in to that view that is strategic for what I'm working on. I want to add a single door right here. Click once on the single door to grab it, and then click on the intersection to place it. Now I also want to add a double door up on the top floor. So again, navigate to the view that is strategic for what you're working on, and I'll click on my double door, and then I can snap it right to my intersection, and it drops in there. Now let's also add some windows along the front of this. So we can add a window right here at this intersection. We'll use our same large window, and then if I just snap to my intersection, click to place it, and there we have a window on this side. Now again, that window is already selected, so I can click once to pick it up, tap Control or Option on the Mac, and move my cursor along the green axis to suggest a direction, let go of the mouse, and type in 8 apostrophe enter. So make a copy of that at 8 feet. Now I want to make a copy of both of these windows down the line at 24 feet so that we have the same set of windows on this side of the house as well. So what I can do is use my selection tool, hold down Control or Option on the Mac to add to my selection, and then go to my Move Copy tool, click once to pick them up, start moving my cursor, and tap Control or Option on the Mac. Now once I find my green axis, I can let go of the mouse and type in 24 apostrophe enter. And now I've made a copy of those windows down the line at 24 feet. Now let's also make a copy of this window. We want to make a copy of this window straight down, and then we're going to run a copy and array along the house as well. So I can right click in the white space to clear my selection. I'll just right click off in the white space, and then I can kind of zoom in so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to hover on this back top corner. I'll click once to pick it up, start moving my cursor to suggest a direction, and tap Control or Option on the Mac. Now for this one, I'm just going to tap the up arrow key, and remember that locks our blue axis. So now I can zoom out, and so we're moving this constrained on the blue axis. All I need to do now is define how far down I want the top of that window trim to be, and if I just hover and snap to that point, I can click, and now we've got these guys lined up. Now what I can do is hover on my window, click once to pick it up, move my cursor over to on the green, tap Control or Option on the Mac, And as long as I'm on the green axis, I can let go of my mouse and type in 8 apostrophe enter. And we want to do that 3 times. So 3x enter. Now I have all those windows copied along the bottom there. So we've added all of those guys in there. Now let's add just a little bit more detail. First though, we can go to Edit and choose Delete Guides, because our useful life of these guides has expired, so we can clear out all of those guides with one click. So we want to add some more detail. I have another more intricate detail here. We have a we do have a gable vent. Let's click on the SketchUp 101 collection to actually get inside of that collection, and then we're going to go to the next page of results, and here you can see we have our gable vent right there. So I'll click on the gable vent, and then I'm going to position this right at the top here, but I want it to be centered perfectly on the roof. So I can encourage an inference by hovering on the endpoint and encourage the inference. There it goes. So you can see that blue dotted line projecting down, and I'll click to finish. And right click in the white space to clear my selection. Now this next detail, I want to zoom in on this top front corner, and we're going to grab this guy. I just called it the detail. We'll hover all over here, and you can see how this will actually reorient itself to each surface. We want it to stick out to the side, and I'll click on that endpoint. Now this detail is pre-selected, and what we want to do is make a copy of it all the way to the end of the house, to the other wall, and then assign it an array of 5 divisions. So what I can do is hover on it and roll my cursor in, and I want to select this endpoint, click once to pick it up, tap Control or Option on the Mac to toggle my copy command. Now to make this one a little bit easier, kind of like what we did when we were copying the window, I can tap my right arrow key. When I do that, I've now locked my red axis, and if I zoom out, I want to go only as far as this point. So I'll click once there and let go of the mouse. At this point, I can type in 5 divided by enter. So I assign 5 equal divisions between those copies and fill everything else in with copies. So now we have those nice and evenly spaced. Alright, so our house is pretty detailed. It's looking pretty good. We also have a site. The site, the base point is the same as the, it's actually, the base point for the site is at the front bottom corner of this front left column. So we'll click once on the site, and that takes a little bit more time to download. It has the trees and people all set up in there. And now, once it's downloaded, I'll just snap it to this bottom front corner. And there we go. Alright, so there's my site. As long as you snap it to that front bottom corner, the front bottom corner of your deck, then it's going to lay itself right into place. Now I'm going to go back to my selection tool. Again, that's my default tool. I don't like the way that the move tool auto selects. It can be helpful, but when I'm just kind of checking out my model, it's better to go back to your selection tool, right click in the white space, and now we can kind of zoom out and take a look at what's happening here. So there's our model all set up, and up to this point, we've taken a look at a lot of ways to be detailed and create some very accurate geometry and also add components in a very accurate way. But to wrap things up for SketchUp 101, let's look at how we can take a really nice clean snapshot of this house. So 3D models are great, but we do eventually have to share them somehow. So if your client or or customer doesn't have SketchUp, it's best just to email them a picture. So we can close our components browser for now, and let's use the position camera tool. The position camera tool is a click and drag process. I'm going to click and hold on the red X and then drag over and release when my cursor's on the house. So watch my screen first, activate the position camera tool. You can see it's that little guy standing on a red X. So we're going to hover right on this X and click and hold it, move the cursor over here somewhere on the house. That's where our eyes will be looking, and when I let go, that's where I end up. So you can see my eye height down here in the bottom right corner in my measurements dialog box is set to almost 3 inches. We want that to actually be 66 inches. So I'll type in 66, enter, and then I'm automatically set up on my look around tool. So you can see that my cursor is actually those 2 eyes. If I click and drag, I can look around kind of like a video game and get this house a little bit more into my camera view. Now it appears that we're just a little bit too close. So we could either back ourselves up, or we can change the field of view of our camera, which I think is a pretty cool feature. You need to click on the zoom tool. So activate your zoom tool, and now you can see the measurements dialog box is set to field of view at 30 degrees. So we never need to click in that measurements dialog box. I'm just going to type in 4.5, enter. And now that's going to give us a little bit more of a fisheye lens. And at this point, I can click on our Bright Ideas Consultants exterior presentation. And that's going to turn on our shadows and all the bells and whistles there that make the rendering look really good. And it looks like I just nudged my mouse there, so we want to I'm going to back this out again, and I'll run through those steps. So we'll go back to BIC work very quickly, position camera, click and drag, set our eye height to 66, and then we want to go back to our zoom tool and set our field of view to be 45, and then I'll click on our BIC exterior presentation. And I think what I've done here is actually saved my scene under Window, Scenes. We have a field of view issue here. So that's okay. We're just going to click and let's see, keep this at 45. And I'm just going to use, go back to my selection tool. There we go. It was just kind of stuck on that that view. Okay, so we're good there. We'll go back to our selection tool, and then we want to go to Window, Shadows, and let's adjust our shadows to be in August. And also we want to set it to be earlier in the morning. That way we get some nice direct sun on the front of our house. Alright, so there we go. Everything's looking pretty good. Now, if we want to create a snapshot image of this, and I'm going to try, let me just back off into earlier August. Okay, that looks good. Good enough. You can slide your shadows around and get some different results if you'd like to play with that a little bit more. To export an image or take a snapshot of this model, we can go to File, Export, 2D Graphic. So File, Export, 2D Graphic, and we can actually take a snapshot of this view. And I'm going to call my snapshot Beach House 01. And over here we have our export options. And when you click on the options, you can see that we can set our width and our height. You usually always want to leave your anti-alias on, and you might as well just make it the best quality. If you want to make it a smaller file size, it's easier to do that post-process in Photoshop. That is possible though, but the file size is really never that big, that huge. So if you're not on Pro, you're only going to be able to use the view size. But if you are on Pro, you can go ahead and bump this up to something like, we'll just say 2000. Say OK, and then choose Export. And then that's going to take a snapshot picture of that model. And now you want to make sure that you're aware of where you've saved that, and you can go ahead and email that to a client. So that's a pretty slick way for sharing your 3D model. So thank you for watching SketchUp 101. Again, my name is Mike Brightman with Bright Ideas Consultants. Please take a moment to look around on the page here, and we do have some additional training options. We always offer 30 minutes of free online consulting. So I can work with you one-on-one. We can share screens, and I can just basically look over your shoulder, and I can show you how SketchUp can fit into your exact workflow and apply to your exact project type. Also, we have a SketchUp 201 video, which is the next step after SketchUp 101, and that's very valuable lessons on organizing models into groups and components and layering, and also working with Match Photo. So please give us a shout anytime if you have any questions about any of our live trainings or online training feature options, and we do look forward to working with you.